Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about one of the many great traditions we have at LSU, which is Saturday in Death Valley, which is basically Tiger Stadium at LSU where their football team plays, in case you're not a sports person at all. Before I go into this, the gameplay you're seeing is actually one of the first Call of Duty games I have played right after I got. It's actually, I think, the first Call of Duty game that I played right after I got it and I downloaded it. I don't think I really played it enough to really have a full analysis and opinion on it to do a whole review. So I'm going to push that back to a little bit later to where I play a little bit more of the game, play some different game modes, play with some different guns, all that different stuff. But going back into the main point of the video, I'm actually going to talk about my experiences at Tiger Stadium, and I think this is perfect timing considering LSU had just upset Alabama in football in the year 2022 in a very good game, a lot of back and forth, especially in the second half that went to overtime, and Brian Kelly, the head coach, having absolute balls to go for two and to end up winning the game. And this is something that normally does not happen for LSU at all. It's like they're Alabama's little brother, and Alabama is usually one of, if not the best program in all of college football, which pains me to say, but that's usually been the case, especially under Nick Saban. So being able to beat them is a big deal no matter what. Actually, this is the first time LSU has beaten Alabama in Tiger Stadium since 2010. I was 14 years old when that happened. I'm 26 now. Just to kind of put that into a little bit perspective, I guess you could say. But before I get started and rank my top 5 experiences at Tiger Stadium, definitely click the like button if you like this video and subscribe if you're new. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Let me know about your experiences, no matter if you were at LSU or if you went to a different university and went to different sporting events. Usually it's football that's like the biggest one for schools, but other schools, they have better basketball or baseball programs, whatever it may be. I kind of wanted to, I actually created a little bit of a list here, and before I go into number 5, I actually wanted to do a little bit of an honorable mention, and that one I'm just going to kind of lump together, and it's going to be the 2 times Alabama has played at LSU when I was there. And just to give a little context, I was actually at LSU between the years 2014 and 2018. So it was actually the football seasons of 2014 and 2017. So not really the best years at LSU. In fact, it's actually when Les Miles got fired and then hired Coach Ed Orgeron to be the head coach. But they came to LSU twice in 2014 and then again in 2016. And it is a very different experience because, again, you have Alabama coming into town, and Nick Saban used to be the head coach at LSU, so there's that added effect where he left LSU when a lot of people say he shouldn't have, but again, that's a different story. You just have a lot of, obviously Alabama being a big program has a lot of following. So a lot of fans showed up for that game. It was definitely crazy. I don't want to say too similar, but somewhat similar to what you might have seen this past Saturday when LSU beat Alabama. The only reason why I didn't want to rank this at all is just because I think it's just very different when you play Alabama compared to anyone else. And then also the fact that LSU lost both games. They really should have beat them in 2014, but that's a whole different story. Again, I'm not really going into so much of the analysis of the game and everything. It's much more of my experience going there. One thing I should note is the fact that I was able to go to basically every single game because what happens is that LSU, they actually offer basically season tickets to the students. It's not for free. It's basically for, I think when I was there, somewhere about $95 to $100 or something like that. Stupid cheap, by the way, for a whole season. That's basically what happened. It was no assigned seating. It was basically kind of first come, first serve. So especially at a night game, you'd have people waiting in line all day to get those first seats, basically. where you would like stand behind the wall that would block you from going onto the turf. I want to go into number 5, and I kind of wanted to go off the old beaten path to number 5. So I wanted to go into my sophomore year. LSU played Western Kentucky. You'd probably be thinking, Western Kentucky? Why is this such a great experience? Isn't Western Kentucky a smaller school, a group of 5 school? I mean, all this type of stuff. And yes, you are right. And yes, LSU did blow them out. But the reason why it's one of my better experiences is really more for a personal reason and to kind of rub it in a couple of my friends' face. So basically, what happened was that day, and I think the day before even, it stormed really bad to the point where they actually delayed the game for another hour or so, which it sounds not cool, but it was actually really fun for a couple reasons. And so I was basically rubbing in my friend's face because I was the only one that actually brought a poncho. So my friends got soaked while I was basically as dry as I could be. I'm not gonna say I was completely dry, but whatever was covered by my poncho, I was completely dry. And I kept rubbing it into their faces by just yelling, "I love the rain," which is really, really funny in hindsight, but definitely a dick move. But again, I don't care. I was having a lot of fun. Probably had some adult beverages in me, but it's fine. And then with the delayed game, what happened is that usually the people who play the sound will try and keep the people entertained. And so they started playing a lot of different kind of games, I guess, through the big screens and whatnot. I think, if I'm correct, I can't remember which ones it was. Maybe like one or two. And then the main thing is that they started playing Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, which is the ultimate sing-along song, that and Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi. So they started playing that to kind of keep us engaged and whatnot. So that was really fun and definitely very different. Going to number 4, I'm going to go with my sophomore year again when LSU played Auburn. Not Auburn, Florida. I'm actually going to get to that later. But it's actually against Florida. That was, I believe, the only time while I was there, this was a top 10 matchup. I would have to look it up, but I think it was the only time it was a top 10 matchup, and I think it was the week before the college football playoff rankings came off. It was the AP poll, which again, if you don't know, I'm not going to get into it. So for all intents and purposes, just think of it a top 10 matchup in the country. It's something you don't see every single day, obviously. So I think that was just really the biggest thing. And then also with LSU and Florida, they're definitely very, very heated rivals. And so one thing LSU fans, especially the students, like to do is to mock their gator chomp thing, where basically they clap their hands together, one from like in a vertical direction. That's how they kind of clap their hands, like how a gator opens and closes their mouths very wide and everything like that in a vertical way, and basically just mock it by saying it sucks to be a Florida Gator. I just find that to be very funny. Obviously LSU won, but it was very stressful because I think LSU was up like 28-7 or something like that, and then Florida came back to tie it. And the only reason why LSU won is Les Miles, the Mad Hatter, pulled out another trick out of his hat, and he ran another fake field goal. And it ended up being the game-winning touchdown, which was really, really nice. The only reason why I can't really rank this higher because, again, I think the other games are just a lot more memorable than this one. This one and the one against Western Kentucky just kind of gets put into the back burner just because of the other three that I have that I'm about to explain is going to supplant this. So number 3, I'm actually gonna have LSU against Auburn in 2015. That was actually a day game. It was extremely hot. I remember that I completely forgot to put sunscreen on, and this was in the middle of September in Louisiana, which is, for me, it would be a death sentence on getting burned really bad. And so I covered myself by I did bring sunglasses, which was definitely a big plus. But what I did was that everyone got a shirt to wear, but I ended up not wearing it. And so I actually covered my face on it. I say I covered my face. I covered my head. I don't want to say cover my face because that implies I couldn't see, which wasn't the case. And then Basically, I covered my face and my neck so I didn't get burned. And to my credit, I did not get burned. I do remember that. I actually sent it to a bunch of my friends, and one of them simply just saved the picture, made it a meme, and it simply said ISIS. Which, don't want to get into the political undertones of that, but I just thought that was a really funny joke. I just found that to be very funny and very memorable. Sometimes it'll actually come up as like a throwback picture on one of my friends, the one that created it, and then he'll just resend it every year, which I also find funny. And I do remember it, as I said, for just being extremely hot. It had to feel like it was over 100 degrees for sure. The other aspect of it is the fact that LSU completely crushed Auburn, wasn't very close, and LSU, that was the game when, at the time, Leonard Fournette, who is a running back for LSU, one of the best ones really of all time, if not the best, he just went off that day. Guys could not tackle him. They tried to take out his legs. They couldn't do that. One tried to jump onto him. He missed. And then just, again, if you just watch Leonard Fournette's highlights against Auburn from, that was 2015 at LSU. It was a day game. It was one of the best performances I've ever seen in person from a running back. Now, later on in his career, he did actually have a record-breaking performance against Ole Miss back in 2016, I believe it was. But when you look at that one, I'm not saying it was a bad performance. It was a great performance, don't get me wrong. But that, to me, a lot of that was the offensive line creating huge holes for him where he was able to just zip right through for an easy touchdown. So I'm not gonna put that one as his best performance, in my opinion. And that's really the only analysis you're gonna get, because it's more so my experiences. And one thing I will say about Auburn too is the fact that one thing we always call Auburn are Bama rejects, because at least from what I've heard, it does take a higher SAT score, I believe it is, to get into Alabama than it does to get into Auburn. And both those universities are obviously in Alabama. That's one thing that I always found to be extremely funny, is the fact that we would say that chant. Going on from that, number 2, I'm actually going to have the other time LSU played Auburn in Tiger Stadium, but I'm actually going to go to 2017. And the reason being is that the context of the state of LSU football at that time. It was Coach O's first season as a head coach, which started off really, really rocky. They got crushed at Mississippi State, and then followed that up by losing to Troy at home, which was very embarrassing, and I really didn't want to mention that, to be honest. And so the next week they had to play at home against Auburn, who I believe at the time was actually a top 10 team, 9th if I'm not mistaken. And so LSU fell behind very early, like 20-0 or something like that. And luckily they scored a touchdown before halftime, but it looked really grim. And one thing I will say, and another thing about LSU, the student section, LSU fans are very, very ruthless. So after LSU scores a touchdown, LSU does this certain chant where basically we just keep saying that they suck. But in that game, I specifically remember, because we started off so bad, instead of saying that they suck, we were saying that we suck, which was the only time that's ever happened, and I find that to be pretty funny. But again, I just remember how loud and crazy that stadium going when LSU was making that comeback. Auburn fans were getting frustrated and everything like that. Again, it was definitely a classic for sure. And to be honest, every LSU Auburn game, for the most part, is very, very close, no matter how bad LSU is or how bad Auburn is. But the one I'll always remember, my number 1, Saturday night in Death Valley, my freshman year, and this was against Ole Miss. Ole Miss, oh boy. Okay. So, I don't know what it is with the Ole Miss and Hotty Toddy, or whatever it is. So, if you're an Ole Miss fan, please explain that to me. Because apparently I asked some Ole Miss fans that, and they didn't know. So the first thing I did want to throw out there with this experience is College Game Day was actually at LSU for this game. And it was really special, actually, because it's like you have that chance to be on television. You kind of see them do their thing in person, even if it is from a different angle. Obviously, there's like some screens that they look at or whatever it is. It's like some giant screens, really for our viewing pleasure, to kind of see what we look like on television. This is the only time while I was at LSU where they actually had college game day on the parade grounds, which is a huge grassy area that actually used to be used by the military at like 4 a.m. historically, but that's a whole different thing. And then the other times they were actually at LSU while I was there, I think it was both times it was against Alabama, but I could be wrong. And I know for sure it was one of them was against Alabama. I can tell you that. I do have pictures. It was actually in the quad, which I'm not going to go into that, but basically it's kind of like there's a lot of buildings that, like how they're oriented. It's like there's a big kind of, I don't want to say pavilion area, but like an opening where you can go from building to building. It's all outdoors. Again, not going to get too far into that. But yeah, there was college game day, so I got to see a lot of different signs that people created and just kind of critique them. Unfortunately, my freshman year, I did not create my own sign, and I wish I did. But I do remember I did have pictures. It was on my old phone. I don't have it anymore. But I did have some pictures of it, and it was really funny. And obviously, if you're not a football fan, you wouldn't get this. In which I'm sorry, I wouldn't be able to have time to explain it to you. It's already almost 19 minutes, and I'm not even explaining much. But we go from college game day, and this LSU game is at night. So the one thing I will say to finish off is the fact that Saturday night in Death Valley is much different than playing a day game and playing a night game are two different things. It just has a totally different vibe. Obviously, it's not nearly as hot, and I just feel like LSU just plays much different, much more intense. So that's one of the main reasons why this is at the top. The only other one that I think I had on this list that was a night game was the LSU Florida game. And even then, for some reason, this one really sticks out. And I think it's just because how close this was the entire game. At least with the LSU Florida game, it felt like it was going to be a blowout, and then Florida kind of came back, and then LSU ended up winning. But with this one, it was close the entire time. It was a classic Les Miles game. The final score was 10-7 LSU. Very ugly, very brutal. Lots of frustration, especially from Ole Miss. Because at this point, Ole Miss was the number 3 team in the country. They were looking like to be the best team that Ole Miss has ever had. They were getting absolutely frustrated. I've heard that their quarterback at that time was starting to really bicker with fans, which was really throwing off his game, which is really funny. And I remember just the intensity of the crowd the entire time was just special. And winning these 2 games, it really did change the season for this team in particular, because going into this game, LSU wasn't really too spectacular. Like, they were getting better from the start, but they didn't look really too spectacular until they beat Ole Miss. It was actually kind of the same with the LSU Auburn game that was number 2 back in 2017. Hence why I had that number 2, because it really did turn their season around, and LSU crowd was super loud too, even if it was a day game. As I said, just being a night game against Ole Miss, it was just like the number 3 team in the country at that time was just really special. All eyes are on you, and you perform to the best that you really could, because that offense in 2014 for LSU was pitiful. But one of my favorite things about it is the fact that LSU did a 92-yard drive in the fourth quarter to take the lead. They ran 13 plays. The first 12 plays were runs, and then the last play for the touchdown was a passing play. Classic Les Miles. I don't even know what else to say. One thing I will say, especially in LSU student section, is the fact that, especially if you're at the bottom, you need to watch your head, because people will throw anything that they have. Bottles, like fountain drinks of like the plastic water bottles, like anything like that. The fountain drinks, they will throw anything. A bag of chips in celebration. They will. Even if it is like a $10 worth bottle of water, which I know, it's crazy. Luckily, I was sitting near the top at that game, so I didn't have to worry about that too much. It was absolute bonkers, especially after that touchdown. Like, everything was getting thrown. And the worst part is, it wasn't really getting thrown onto the field. It was getting thrown onto the bottom part of the student section, which I kind of do feel bad for them. Yeah, and that was the only game while I was there that we actually stormed the field. Unfortunately, since I was near the top, Once I got onto the field, that's when they basically escorted us off and said that was enough. So I was only on the field for a few seconds, which kind of blows. At the very least, one thing I will say is that after every game, me and my friends always went to Canes, we went to Canes and we just took out some canes from there and then ate and enjoyed ourselves. Had a little beer, had a little fun. Well past midnight, probably. And that's pretty much most night games, to be honest. And after every LSU game, we had canes. Take out there, go to one of my friends' apartments, eat, just talk about the game, all that. It's something that I really do miss. I really do in general. I really wish I can go back to those days. But again, time flies and you have to move on to a different stage in your life. You can't live in the past, you gotta always live in the present. So I think that's really it with my top 5 experiences as a student at Tiger Stadium in Death Valley. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I know it is very long, but again, I could talk about this forever if you were to ask me to. I really do want to hear from you. What was your favorite experience at a sporting event, especially if you were a college student? I would really love to hear from you. And again, like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you're new, and give a comment in the comment section below. Peace.